Okay guys, you may call me Chris Stuckmann ripoff, but I want to address this. I'm actually going to leave a link in the description towards the video that he did based on what he complains about with horror movies today. That's right, the problem with horror movies today. I'll leave a link in the description. That's right guys, this is for horror movies today. I'm not sure, maybe I have addressed this, maybe I have not. Actually, yes, I have. But I want to make a more clear thing. I actually just recently watched the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directed by Tobe Hooper, who also directed one of my favorite horror movies, Poltergeist. I have not seen a lot of horror movies. But when I saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, this is really a horror movie that's better. Not only because it actually has a plot that makes sense, but also because it makes the best use of its low budget. It was less than $300,000. This was made back in the 70s. The acting is not really good, although to be honest, the Crazy Cannibal Hillbillies was a little bit better. They're actually believable, actually. I had to give credit to Tobe Hooper for actually doing that, doing justice to those characters. Also, there's such a great mystery surrounding the family, especially Leatherface, one of my favorite, who has probably since become one of my favorite characters in the horror genre. Favorite? I don't know. Most of them are really just slasher characters, such as Michael Myers from the Halloween franchise. The William Shatner mask, painted white, Captain Kirk mask actually. It's pretty creepy. Also, I really liked Halloween. Like I said, it's low budget, it's made back in the 70s, but it was really good. Also, Nightmare on Elm Street. That's a great movie. Very creative. Made back, I think, maybe in the 80s. It was written directed by Wes Craven. Halloween was written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, and directed by Carpenter. And of course, there was another writer involved on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper, but also Kim Henkel. Just want to get that around. Okay? Yeah. Anyways, guys, this is Freddy Krueger, who is just a guy who's so cartoonish, yet for some reason, he has this incredible charm. Robert Englund offered up this incredible charm to him that made him such a likable character. Oh yes, probably my favorite, Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs. I love that movie so much. It's creepy, it's a great psychological thriller, also some good horror scenes, there's some great tension, also fantastic performances from Jodie Foster. Fuck! Who else was it? Who played? Shit! Well, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, so that's probably why I'm stuck. But I know not the guy who played the guy who was making the man suit. I can't believe I forgot his name. Bill the Butcher. Yes, that's what it was. But also Anthony Hopkins as Lecter. He is just so shocked. Even though he has no real time on screen, he has a very small portion of it. He makes every second memorable. You can recall everything that's happening, and sometimes you'll just go back watching those scenes. The exchanges between him, Jodie Foster's Clarice Starling is just tense. It's just unsettling, and Their dynamic is just shockingly effective, and there's just some odd kind of chemistry, I guess, between these two. Not romantic, but there's some kind of weird connection, and there's some weird connection between these two, and it really creates some great thrills, but also unsettles the viewer. That's kind of examples of good horror characters, and of course, good horror movies. Horror movies today are just a mess. This is what people think are scary today. Jump scares. Oh my god, look at this. That's a poor example, it's an amateur example, but you get the point. It's all these stupid jump scares that don't benefit the film, really. Most of the time, they're just thrown in there just to keep the audience in their seats. But to be honest, according to Chris Stuckmann, I'm quoting him here, so you may call me just a guy who's ripping off it or following what he's saying, but when I look at that, yeah, jump scares are not the best part of the film. They actually kind of damage it. Mostly because you're kind of ruining building tension, but also because you're kind of giving away a lousy scare that's resetting the pace. It ruins all this build-up and all this pacing and kind of resets it, or damages it. Damages the flow of the film. or of over certain building tension scene with building tension or anything like that. Just a scene that's pacing at a normal, at like steadily, consistent, and you kind of damage that consistency. And sometimes it happens a lot, and unfortunately, it doesn't really scare the audience every time. That's just done to keep people from getting bored. But the problem is, the numerous jump scares contribute to a person getting bored. That's not how you do it. You have to get the audiences throughout it. But also, there's a lot of dumb, stereotypical characters. Characters make decisions that just don't make any sense. The Purge was one of those examples. The son let this homeless guy into the house. And thus all this shit ensued because of him. What a fucking idiot. Also, there were times when there were some bad situations where these characters made dumb decisions, such as, I think, the daughter kind of not going to the safety room. She was kind of almost like walking away because after her boyfriend was shot. Why the fuck you do that? It's dangerous. And I think he was in the house. The homeless guy. Also, the black guy dies so many times in horror movies. Yeah, do you know how old that is? You can't make that fresh because it's old as fuck. And it's just stupid. Also, why is there CGI used sometimes? CGI just hurts a horror film. Practical effects are really where it's at. And of course, we're not going to see some cool practical effects in Mad Max Fury Road. I have seen some good blend of practical and visual effects in horror movies, such as Poltergeist, which had a use of practical effects, but also had some CGI, had some visuals in there, which I thought worked well and helped contribute, rather than damage it, really contributed to the atmosphere and really helped build the tension and really create that scare. Really helped just scare us, basically, because that's what a horror movie does. Also, you just don't want to have stupid plots. Sometimes there are some plots that are a little outlandish beyond belief, but you make them believable. Now, I heard that Rosemary's Baby has where it has Satanism and pregnancy. And I think it had to do with a woman who was pregnant, and it's the devil's child. Now, this film received a lot of praise. I mean, it's one of the most acclaimed movies on Rotten Tomatoes with a 98%. It's also beloved by audiences. It has, I think, 3 Oscar nods in its name. I think it has a few wins. I have no idea. I haven't seen the film. I know it's on Netflix. I will watch it one day. And it was made back in the 60s, so it is kind of old. But, Mark from Fanboy Flicks actually said that these old horror movies, we can't really appreciate them because we're living in this time where we're just basically desensitized to everything. And I agree with him. The problem is, these horror movies are considered classics, but sometimes we don't believe that. And it's really sad because this stuff actually is pretty appreciative. Mostly I appreciate the stuff because of its legacy, but there are some times where I was creeped out. Texas Chainsaw Massacre actually creeped me out a couple times. I was actually disturbed. Why? Because there's actually a scene involving a couch made out of human remains. Also, Leatherface's house, most of it was covered with dead human remains. Some of it was even decorated like that, like human bones. It's disgusting. It worked so well, though, and created such a disturbing atmosphere. It really was unsettling in the best way possible. Also, the Leatherface's mask was pretty interesting. This actually really sets, and also, it sets standards. Movies like Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Halloween have set standards in slasher movies. I think Texas Chainsaw had, powered machinery as a weapon, and of course, a faceless villain. Pretty cool. And I think, but I think if you want something more basic, Halloween is something that's that's kind of more on the more basic ones. They have this unique camera angles, although they had a little gore, unlike the genre, which is just over-bloated with it, which is ridiculous, in my opinion. There's a reason why. We all have our reasons. Anyways, guys, it's not really a problem, but it had kind of the classic staples, of a common weapons in horror movies, such as a knife, a big steak knife. Also, of course, a faceless hero, faceless villain. But of course, Halloween came out after Chainsaw Massacre. So, you have to really credit Texas Chainsaw for doing that. Although I'm not sure he's the first ever character to be wearing a mask. but really throughout the entire movie, he didn't have any real face. He didn't really expose that. Also, he never really talked. He did talk sometimes. Sometimes he muffled shit. He was like mumbled and shit. But and sometimes he would even scream. Also, like the end scene, he was just tossing around his chainsaw like all over the place. It's a little heavy, but it's just like barely nothing to him. But of course, he kills people with it, so I'm not surprised. Also, horror movies just don't have a real sense of tension. It just gets boring. Also, the characters are just dumb. I know I've covered this before, but I really want to clarify that. You just don't have characters that we are invested in. They're just stereotypes that just get old and kind of are insignificant to the story. They're just there to die because people like that. Oh, people die. Wow, that got old fast. Also, they don't care to have any sort of quality or any believability in otherwise outlandish elements of a story. That's ridiculous. I mean, don't you want to make it believable? And to be honest, like Halloween, Michael Myers can't be killed. And that was believable. It also helped with tension. Also, the fact that he doesn't really talk. His mouth, all you hear him is breathing. But he walks, but he walks pretty fast, which actually kind of helps build the tension. Kind of like a silent antagonist. But the problem is, though, is that now these days, with all these horror remakes and all these prequels that are being made, it's ruining these characters. There are some characters that are better off with a mystery behind them, such as Leatherface. What made him is some of the horror came from the mystery behind this guy. You never really knew who he was, and that made it more terrifying because you didn't know if, oh my god, like, is he just a cannibal? But is he a person who's also, how threatening a person is he? You don't really know that. Also, we can all agree that Darth Vader, now this is not horror, but he was a villain that is just iconic to this day, and he was very menacing. But the problem is, who he was before in the prequels was just ridiculous and insulting. I mean, made him a whiny bitch. Fuck you, Hayden Christensen. Fuck you, George Lucas. Why'd you screw that up? Also, probably was just unnecessary. I mean, I know you were making episodes 4 through 6, but maybe you should have thought better of 1 through 3. You had 15 years and you fuck it up. So excited for episode 7, because it's a Star Wars fanboy doing it. J.J. Abrams. We're all excited, we're all seeing it. But to be honest, guys, this is ridiculous. I mean, you want to give characters, sometimes it's nice to have the element of mystery, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we want our questions answered, but some questions are better left unanswered. And I actually thought that worked with, of course, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, with Leatherface. It actually was more intriguing that what you didn't know about him. Freddy Krueger, well, he was a guy who you realized as a child, I think like a rapist or something, like a child murderer, and he was burned alive by people. They didn't give him a very detailed backstory. It was just really basic that he was a criminal that parents killed. That the kids, like in the film, their parents killed him, burned him alive. Talking about brutal. But it was just really basic though. And while there was some sort of, there's detail in that, it's not too detailed. And you still get some answers for his appearance, but you still have some sort of mystery in this character. Like, what about the claw? What else did you not know about him? You don't know about his childhood or anything. That's what I'm talking about. You don't know a lot more of the deeper personal aspects of the character, which there is. There's still an element of mystery to the character, which makes it intriguing, which it makes him an intriguing character. And it stays that way. That's really cool. That's really how you make a horror movie. And also, jump scares and gore and brutal violence are not scary. They're just lazy and cheap ways to scare people because that just grosses them out. That doesn't really creep them out, it's just gross. And shit. Also, jump scares are just lazy as hell. A real way to scare them is the elements of a film. Like, what I really thought about Texas Chainsaw Massacre was you had this cannibalist family that robs graves and decorates people, decorates their house and furniture and all that shit with human remains. That is creepy as hell. That's scary, motherfuckers. That's really scary. Also, The Conjuring. I mean, The Conjuring, what really was scary was the fact there's this entity in the house, and it's haunting this family. Some people get hurt. There are demons that pop out of nowhere. There's things that attack people. The mom was possessed, for Christ's sake. There had been exorcism performed. That's scary as hell. You can't beat that. See, the more just using ideas rather than just stupid jump scares or gore is better and actually could scare people. Like, it follows. I mean, the idea of, sexually transmitted entity. Seriously, think about that for a minute. You have sex with someone, this curse that they have, this entity that follows them, follows the person who has it now. And whoever gets killed goes down the chain of people who it was transmitted to through sex. It actually worked. It had it had burns. It's kind of weird, but it worked well. It built tension. It's not exactly very scary, but it was a low budget film. But I still had some really tense moments. There were some scares. There weren't any real jump scares. There were some, but they weren't portrayed as false scares. All that loud noise you hear whenever there's a false jump scare, which is too obvious. But I didn't have any real problems with it. The movie I thought was really good. I thought it had good acting, surprisingly good plot, had a great techno score. But what I really liked about it is that it gave us characters that we are invested in. Well fleshed out characters. Not like, not quite three-dimensional. But these people are given up something of a personality or some sort of character that that helps them move along in the film. Like, you actually want to see more of them in the film. You want to see more of them. This is glare right there. Is that from my light bulb? Shit, it burns. Yeah. But also it works. Also, there are some pretty tense moments. But also it had a good idea of exploring the premise. It also offered up some interesting ideas, and it really managed to be scary. I mean, the fact of an entity taking the form of some sort of human and following you at a slow pace, and only you can see it, yeah, it's pretty scary. And it works well. I mean, only you can see it. You have to be lucky. And of course, who knows what can happen? Could you fight it back? Not really. The thing is, like, it's an entity. It's not a human. You can't just kill it and go away like that. When you're like that. It just explored the idea enough well, and I thought it did a good job at being well written, well acted, well directed, and overall feeling like sometimes a homage to other classic horror movies, and overall feeling like a refreshing horror movie to look at. Also had ideas. It used ideas rather than stupid jump scares. Real horror. That's what I like. Anyways, guys, that is my take on what is wrong with horror movies today. What I think really is scary as a horror film. What doesn't work, even though it's a common formula that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's actually kind of a joke. Comment below. Do you agree with me? Do you have some other ideas on how people can fix horror movies? Do you think that do you think I could be wrong? Do you think I'm overreacting? Do you think, whatever. Just comment below what's your opinion, and subscribe to my channel for more videos.